once again to M5's English language learning program, Let's Speak English. I'm Gav Duncan and I'm here on your TV to help you learn English. Now, are you sitting comfortably? Yes? Good. And are you ready for today's lesson? Yes? Good. Okay. Well, let's learn English together. And good afternoon to you all. How the demons from behind the couch are you? Hello, 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 and welcome. Yes, come in, sit down, and make yourselves at home. Well, obviously, you're at home, sitting in your favourite chair or on your favourite sofa. If you've got a favourite sofa, that is. Anyway, the point is this. You're already at home, so you shouldn't need me to tell you to make yourselves at home. Sorry. But when we say that to someone, all we're really saying is relax. So I suppose that it's not a bad thing to say. It's just a bit strange. You sitting in your home and me telling you to feel as though you're at home. Slightly superfluous, no? Yes. And do you all remember that adjective? Superfluous. It means that something is unnecessary. That's all. It comes from Latin and means to overflow. Now, what about those two words? What about that combination? Well, let's look at the verb to flow first. When we use flow as a verb, we're talking about movement. Think about a river, for example. Water flows in a river. Rivers flow to the sea. All that means is that the water in the river moves steadily to the sea. Now, we use the verb to flow with water, but we can also use it with other things and also as a noun. We often talk about an electricity flow or an air flow. We can talk about traffic flow, about how traffic is moving. Is the traffic in the city moving steadily, or is there a problem? If there's an accident, then we know that it will affect traffic flow. It will have an effect on the way that traffic is moving. Slowly, steadily, or not moving very well. We also use it with people. When people are leaving a stadium, for example, we might say that they're flowing out of the stadium. They're coming out continuously and at a steady speed. All right, now, what about over? What's that about? Well, we know the preposition over, don't we? Yes, that means above, but it's normally connected to movement. The helicopter is hovering above the village, but the plane is flying over the city. The same idea, but one has the idea of movement. Okay, so that's the preposition, but here, with this form of over, we're not talking about the preposition. Here, this is a prefix. A prefix. And we all know what prefixes do, don't we? Yes! We add prefixes to the front of a word to change or alter the meaning of that word. A man is a man, but Superman is more than a man. He's above that. He's a Superman. All right. Now, over as a prefix can mean more than one thing. It can mean outer, like with an overcoat, a coat which goes on top of your other clothes, like a big winter coat. It can mean extra, like overtime, extra work you do. It can mean above, like overcast, when we talk about the sky being covered in clouds. And it can also mean excessively, when we're talking about too much of something. People sometimes tell their children to not get overexcited, for example. And that's the idea here with overflow. We're talking about too much of something. So imagine if we try to put too much liquid into a container. What's going to happen? Yes, it's going to overflow, isn't it? Yes, like this. Well, okay, let's just forget about that. I wasn't that hungry anyway. All right, so that's the idea of flow, and that's the idea of overflow, when there's too much of something, more than we need. And that's how we get to superfluous. There's more than enough, too much. So me telling you to feel at home was more than necessary. You are at home, so there was no need for me to tell you to feel at home. It was superfluous. All right, now that's that out of the way. It's time to get started on this week. All right, well, what are we going to have a look at this week? You can guess, can't you? Yes! And you've all guessed correctly. We're going to see all about the present perfect. We know that we need the verb to have and a past participle of another verb to make sentences with the present perfect. Fine, yes. We learnt some past participles, and that's fine and groovy. But what we haven't seen so far, what we haven't talked about so far, is something which is very important. When do we use the present perfect? Okay, so yes, it's important, and yes, that's what we're going to look at now. Hang on to your trousers, pants and socks, because here we go. I think that the perfect tenses are very useful. I use them all the time. But one thing is true, they're not 100% essential. In most situations, when we use the present perfect, for example, we could also make a sentence with the same meaning using another tense. Okay, but although some people might have problems when they start to learn the present perfect, this is no reason to forget it. Okay, it's also true that most North Americans don't use the present perfect. They prefer to use the past simple. But, for me, and for most Brits, the perfect tenses are essential. We use the present perfect to communicate different ideas, to link different times together. It's via these tenses that we can create more complex, more advanced, more sophisticated sentences. This way, we can move up the evolutionary ladder. Darwin will be proud of us. So, we know how to make the present perfect, don't we? Yes, of course we do. We know that to make the present perfect, we have to use the verb to have correctly conjugated and another verb. Okay, the verb to have correctly conjugated, which means that we're either using have or has. If the subject of the sentence is the first person singular, the second person singular, or any of the plural subject forms, then we know that we use have. I have, you have, we have, you have, and they have. Okay. So that also means that we all know that if the subject of the sentence is the third person singular, if we're talking about Alfredo Benchfield, or the Hulk, or Wonder Woman, then we use has, not have. Simple. All right. Now I said that we use have and another verb, and that's true, isn't it? Yes, we all remember that we use have as the auxiliary verb, and then we add the main verb. It's the same thing we do with the present continuous, isn't it? The correctly conjugated form of the verb to be plus the ing form of the main verb. And what about the past continuous? Well, there again, we're using the past simple form of the verb to be, either was or were, as the auxiliary verb, and then we add a verb in the ing form. Okay, and what about the present perfect? What about the form of the present perfect? What do we know about how we make the present perfect? Yes, that's right. You all remember. To make the present perfect, we use have as the auxiliary verb, so either have or has, and then we use the past participle of another verb as the main verb. All right. We learnt a few past participles, so we've got something to work with, and now it's time for us to look at when we use the present perfect. So, first of all, we have to think about the word perfect. We all know what the word means. The adjective perfect, what does it mean? We all know that. If we describe something as perfect, then we're saying that it can't be improved upon. This is the maximum possible. It can't be better. It's as good as it can possibly be. All right, but how does that connect to English grammar and a tense? Well, it doesn't. No. when we're talking about a perfect tense, then we are not saying that this is the best possible tense. No, don't be silly. In English grammar, all perfect means is that there's some connection to something which began in the past. That's all. All right, so when do we use it? Well, as I just said, the idea of a perfect tense, and yes, there's more than one. In addition to the present perfect, we also have the past perfect and the future perfect, but don't worry about those. At the moment, we're only concentrating on the present perfect. So, what do I mean about some sort of connection to the past? Oh, that's just it. When we're using the present perfect tense, we're showing that there is some connection between the time when we're speaking now, in the present, and something which happened then, in the past. So the present perfect just shows that there is a connection between the past and the present. That's all. Think about the past simple for a moment. When we use the past simple, we're telling people about something which started and finished in the past. When we use the present perfect, however, we're showing that there is a connection between the thing that happened in the past and now. So, let's think about when we use it. Well, we know that this tense, the present perfect, connects the past and the present, so we use it in situations when something happened in the past which is connected to the present. Number 1, event in past connected to present. We also used it to talk about something which began in the past and continues to the time of speaking. Number 2, event began in past and continues until now. We use the present perfect to talk about life experience until the time of speaking, and we often see the words ever and never with this one. Number 3, life experience until time of speaking. And we use the present perfect with recent or very recent events or states. And here we often see the words already, still, yet, and just. Number 4, recent or very recent events and states. And we also use the present perfect with events in the past where the result is still noticeable, when we can see the results of something. For this one, however, it's probably more normal to use the present perfect continuous, so we'll come back to this one, okay? Now, one thing we can see when we look at those 4 points is that, well, they're not particularly well defined, are they? I mean, think about a different list for a moment. A, potato. B, monkey. C, banana. D, speedboat. Now, with that list, we can see that the 4 nouns we've got are very well defined and very well separated. None of those 4 nouns can be confused with any of the others, can they? No. But with the 4 categories for the present perfect, there's a fair amount of overlap, isn't there? All of them can be confused. 1 overlaps with 2, 2 overlaps with 3, and 1 and 4, etc., etc. Now, this isn't a problem, it's just something we need to remember. This is just, well, a little bit unusual. We normally expect things to be separated by thick lines. This is 1. This is not 2, 3, or 4. This is 2. This is not 1, 3, or 4. That sort of thing. Here, the lines aren't as thick. Here, this Venn diagram is a bit of a mess. There are bits moving all over the place. Alright, and on that thought, even if it is slightly confusing, it's time for us to go. Yes, our 15 minutes for the day is up. Time came and time went, and now it's also time for us to go. I'm going home for a coffee and then, well, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. And what about you lot? Well, you might have some chores to finish. You might have to hoover the living room or clean the hall or something like that. I don't know. You do. All right, people, if you've got chores to do, then do your chores. If you've got homework to do, then do your homework. If you're free for the rest of the day, then enjoy yourself. Starting now. I'll see you all tomorrow. See you later. Have fun. www.mediaclick.hu. Bye.